Welcome back to the PRFF podcast. For this episode, I am graced with the presence of Josiah Downey, director of Interconvolution. Did I say it right?
Yeah, that's about it. People pronounce it a lot of different ways, so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Can we get the correct way from the director himself real quick?
It's interconvolution. So I think you pretty much had it.
Awesome, thanks. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing very well.
I'm so excited for this interview. I've been excited about it all day. I'm glad to get to the bottom of this confusing movie.
I don't know if we're gonna get to the bottom of it. I don't even know where the bottom of it is, but I can definitely give you some behind the scenes and stuff like that because it was a really fun project to work on.
I gotcha. All right, so you, Zach, and Andrew, y'all kind of have a unique position compared to the other directors. You know your actors and you know your categories. You know the stipulations beforehand. What was your original reaction to your word, your category, your actor? Tell me a little bit about that.
So we were trying to come up with an idea to do something different. Like we did genres the first year, and so we
Mhm.
were batting around some different ideas. So I don't remember whose idea it was to do the adjectives thing, but really, like, yeah, I think that'll be a lot of fun. So we collected all the adjectives, and then when we did our meeting together, where we pull the names out of the hat for all the different things, we narrowed down the words because we only could use half the words, so we narrowed that down. And then after that, we just started drawing out in pairs names for each word and kind of went through them. And it was funny because convoluted is the word that I submitted.
Really?
It just so happened to be that I got drawn on the word I submitted. And when I was thinking of an adjective, I was trying to think of something that would be like fun to work with and
Mhm.
stuff as far as making a film. And when I thought of convoluted, I had just recently watched um I just I had just recently watched a Christopher Nolan film, so I was thinking about convolutedness.
Mhm.
And so like that would be a fun one. And if I did it, I wanted to do a spoof
Mhm.
uh of Christopher Nolan's stuff. And
Yeah.
so I was like, I'll go ahead and throw that in there. And then I
Mhm.
ended up getting it. So I was like, well, I guess I'm committed to that now. I gotta make it happen.
That's pretty cool. Sam Maddox, actually, his word was unkempt, and that's the word he submitted as well. So that's just interesting how that happened, how that played out. All right, so you submit and you get your own word for convoluted, and you kind of had the inspiration of Christopher Nolan, who I'll argue and agree with that he probably the king of being convoluted with his writing and directing. But tell me about what was your light bulb moment for your film?
So I started with, I was like, I want to do something kind of playing off of Nolan's craziness and all the things that he does. So my original concept was, I wanted to have Paul, because he was my assigned actor, and
Mhm,
then somebody else, um, like going through a house, and like every room would have some kind of different reference to one of Nolan's movies,
mhm,
and they just kind of be like transferring through. And then it might like come, the house that I wanted to use is actually like a mansion,
mhm.
that there's somebody I know whose grandmother has like an old mansion with just a ton of rooms in it. And so I thought it would be fun to like kind of weave the way through there. And then it has a really creepy looking basement, so just like end up there and then have like a battle with a telekinetic shovel. That 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 was the original concept. Um, however, the mansion was not. I wasn't able to use the mansion because nobody was going to be around
Mhm.
the only time that Paul was available to film. So I ended up just scrapping that idea, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do something Nolan. And I messaged Nick Collier, and I
Mhm.
was like, hey, I'm going to do something based off of Nolan's work. I'm like working on the script and stuff. Do you want to be in it? I'm going to film on this day, because I already contacted Paul and he was free like one day, and he
Mhm.
was like, dude, I'm in. He hadn't even seen the script or anything,
Yeah.
but just the fact that it was going to be based off of Nolan, he was excited about it.
What is your connection to Nick Collier? Because I'll say I wasn't super close with him, but he and I used to get together and watch WWE pay-per-views back at Asbury. So my mind was just blown when I saw him in your film. I was like, wait, I know that guy. What's your connection to him?
So I worked with Nick for over a year,
Hmm.
because he worked with Richfield and was traveling with us for most of it as a director.
Hmm.
And we roomed together a ton of times, because a lot of times when you're doing a bunch of shows with Richfield, they'll kind of room people in the same thing. So I had roomed with him like a bunch of times.
Hmm.
And I knew that he wanted to do more acting type of stuff and be
Hmm.
involved in more like local film things. So I figured he might be interested in it. Plus, he loves
Hmm.
actions. So I was like, all in all, I was like, I think this is like the perfect role, and it was. He did a fantastic
He
job.
does an amazing he gives an amazing performance in this film. So please send him a message and let him know that everybody loved it.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely sent him the message and stuff and let him know that we won and all that. So yeah, so because of the not being able to use that house, I was like, okay, I got to focus this in a little more.
Mhm.
So I started with a premise, because every Nolan film has like a crazy premise. So
He
like Tenet,
has
it's
he has
the
a concept that he just begins exploring.
exactly, and that like the film explores that. And so like
Mhm.
Tenet, it's like being able to travel forwards and backwards in time.
Mhm.
Interstellar, it's being able to do it's like the kind of going through space and time and all that kind of stuff. Inception, it's like being able to go into different levels of the dream. And so there's all kinds of crazy things. So I was like, I got to do something different than what he did, but like just wacky. And
Mhm.
so I came up with the idea of like whipping forward or backward in time, and then kind of slowing down and then whipping back again, but
Mhm.
like at random moment. So it's like you'd be like in a new place for a short time, then all of a sudden you just out of there again. And I was like, I think that would be fun to play with and just be confusing and weird on screen.
You're talking about the temporal whips that the others use, right?
That is correct. That is correct. You've done your research.
I've done my research. I've watched your films like a couple dozen times because I love it so much. I shot you a message. I think I edited it. I I think I took it out of the episode, but Mitchell Judy said that your film was his favorite. He thought it was just beautifully directed and beautifully shot. Yours was his favorite of the night, and I understand why it's an amazing masterpiece of creativity and convolutedness.
Yeah,
Um,
I had a ton of fun making it. Like I really was just kind of going for just having a fun time putting it together, and wanted to do something that had more like action to it and felt more cinematic. So that was one of the goals of it, and I feel like I accomplished that pretty well.
so give me a bit of a timeline for your between like how quickly did you get your idea? How long did it take to write the script, shooting, editing, etc.?
I didn't get started with writing on it for a while. I contacted Paul like a couple weeks in after finding out, and we like nailed down a date. So then I had a hard deadline in July. I want to say either like the end of the first week in July or beginning of the second week.
Mhm.
We had a hard date. And so then it was like, okay, I got to start writing this thing. So I sat down and I kind of came up with the temporal whip idea and started forming that a little bit. And then I think like a couple days, like the weekend before the weekend that we shot this, we went to a coffee shop and just sat for a couple of hours and banged out the rest of it. And pretty much that was
Yeah.
the final script. So sent that to Nick and Paul. Asked Logan Schaefer if he could come and help out. Um, and the next weekend we met on a Saturday. I want to say probably around like 9:30 in the morning. We got together, and kind of got stuff ready. And then we went out and we kind of filmed things moving. It's all filmed close to my apartment. And so
Mhm.
we kind of moved further and further away from my apartment, and then came back, had lunch, which Melissa made, which I was really appreciative of. She did a lot as far as the behind the scenes. Like, she did a lot as far as making the food, helping to get the house ready to go so we could film and all of that. She wasn't very happy when I just credited her with being the scientist and waiting so long for me to finish editing it.
Mhm.
I'm trying to make up for that now.
It's
But
been fun doing this podcast and finding out about the women behind the directors, the women behind the festival,
yeah.
because Sarah obviously did not support Andrew's idea. Holly got to be in Mitchell's, Ellen
Mhm.
got to be in Sam. It's just fun to get the behind the scenes into the relationships that create the festival almost.
Yes. Yeah, no, it definitely is. It definitely is great. So I was appreciative of her helping me so much with kind of making the whole project happen. But yeah, we filmed it all the outside stuff in the morning into the early afternoon, came back, ate lunch, and then filmed the inside stuff. And then that was it. So I think we were done by 4:30 in the afternoon. So it was a total of like maybe like 6 hours that we filmed the whole thing, except for Melissa's part. We filmed everything except for her part. So when her and Paul are talking, those were filmed on completely different days and in different rooms.
Okay.
Actually, they're not in the same room.
Tell me a little bit about her part. Is her part sped up at all, or is she really talking that fast? Because she nails it.
She's really talking that fast. Yeah, she's not. That was just her going. She was able to. Part of the reason I had the computer there was so she could pretend to be typing and so she could read it, because that was a ridiculous line. Like, it doesn't really make sense to me even after after writing it.
Mhm.
So yeah, so she was just reading off the script from the computer. But yeah, no, not sped up at all. That's her actual speed.
That's amazing. You actually already talked about. I have the question of what was the original idea and what changed, but you've already touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, if time or budget wasn't an issue, what would be different about this? Like if I gave you another month to work on it and an extra $1,000, what do you think would change about this film?
Probably like run a plane into a building, I would say. Yeah, I mean, if I had more of a budget, yeah, I would probably just go bigger on the effects and things.
Mhm.
Probably do even more with the action scene, because that was a lot of fun to put
Mhm.
together. Yeah, it would be fun to do a little more with the action stuff. But that would be the main thing.
Your film does have a lot of action, and one of my favorite lines in the film is like, "Who are you shooting at? We can't see them." You've already told me, but just for the sake of the podcast, tell me why that line is there.
That would be a reference to Tenet, where in the final battle you pretty much never see the enemy at all. Like, they're having this whole battle and stuff, but you never actually see who they're fighting for the most part. But yeah, so that's kind of poking fun. This one's mostly poking fun at Tenet, which I love. I really enjoyed and stuff. But it
Mhm.
is one of those ones where I watched the movie and then I was like, okay, I want to show this to Melissa. So then Melissa comes back and we watched it again with her. And first off, the first time I tried to watch it without subtitles. So I watched the first 45 minutes of it without subtitles. And I was like,
Indeed.
I have no clue what's happening. So I turned on subtitles and then I could actually understand what they were saying for
Mhm.
the rest of the film, which was very helpful. But then we watched it together, and Melissa's review, I'm pretty sure her review of it was, that was whack. She's like, that makes no sense. And I do agree that it makes less sense on rewatching, I would say, which was my goal. After watching it 12 times, do you feel like it made more or less sense to you?
Your film?
Yeah,
Oh,
interconvoluted.
your film gets the Christopher Nolan sticker. Like it makes just enough sense that it's like if you don't think about it, it works.
Yes.
And that's Nolan's brand.
Yes, I would say that's exactly how I felt about Tenet and stuff. It's just it doesn't, when you really start to delve into it, it just gets real confusing.
One of the so along with the convolutedness of the film and the confusion of it, there is a good bit of comedy, and this mostly stems from Paul slamming his body into walls. Tell me a little bit about that.
Man, Paul was such a good sport about that. And I did like, maybe I think I did like one test with someone as far as the back, like reversing stuff thing.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, I imagine it'll work. So we pretty much just kind of made it up on the spot as far as what we were doing for the temporal whips.
Mhm.
And it was quite entertaining to do it. One of my favorite moments was we were inside the room where Paul kind of shows up and talks to the scientist, and I think it was like the first or second take, he like slams into the door and goes, oh, and we all just like, I just cracked up laughing. I couldn't not laugh because because the other thing is when he hit the door, you could see the door bend in on the frame and go back out. Like he was throwing himself into the door. Afterwards, he's like, sorry, I probably like broke your door or something. But yeah, he was dedicated to the physical comedy, which I appreciate.
It's amazing. I so Zach said that when his episode goes live, he will release all of like the full cut of Trevor's monologue as a crazy person. I
Mhm.
am asking you to release the full cut of just a compilation of Paul slamming his body into a door. Do you
I think I sent something in the group a while back where I did some like behind the scenes stuff. Well, I'll have to go back and check.
Mhm,
But let me see if I can find that again, because I'm pretty sure I put together like kind of a bloopers type of thing.
mhm.
So maybe I could release that when this episode comes out.
Tell me a little bit about because excluding the immobilizer ray, I believe your film is the only one to have a gun in it. Tell me a little bit about working with gun. Is that a prop gun? Is that real? Tell me a little bit about that.
So the shotgun and the like AK type of gun that the other is carrying. Actually, no, I don't think we ended up using the shotgun at all. Nick had brought a couple of airsoft guns that were spray painted all black,
Okay.
that we could use. So yeah, like the AK thing that the other is holding is one of those airsoft guns.
Mhm.
Pistol is actually a prop pistol, not a firing one, but like a replica pistol. So it's actually like made out of metal and stuff.
Mhm.
And that pistol is from Isaac's site, which a number of the guys in the group helped work on. Zach wrote and directed it. I produced it. I know Cody Nowles worked on it. I can't remember. I think there's a bunch of people that worked on that project back at Asbury.
Mhm.
But that's actually what we had purchased that pistol from. So that's a little inside bit. But yeah, we had to be careful with that. The area that we were shooting outside that scene, I'm not gonna disclose exactly where that is.
Mhm.
I'm also not gonna say for sure whether or not I had permission to be there,
Okay.
or even if I knew who owns that land.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna leave that just for for legal purposes, or I'm not gonna say, but I may or may not have had permission, and may or may not have known who that land belongs to. But it's a secluded area. But to get there, we had to kind of drive, and then I like dropped off and like put the weapons back there, and then drove back.
Mhm. That way you
And
weren't walking around with guns.
Exactly, exactly. Because we had all the rest of the parts before that where we didn't have any guns, like moving up to
Mhm.
that point. And so we were just filming all the rest of that. I remember afterwards, I went to get the car again and bring it back to pick up the guys. And they're standing on the side of the road. And I'm like pulling up to them. And
Uh-huh.
there's a guy who pulls up the other direction and he stops and he like looks over and kind of looks, and then he looks over and then he looks, and then he looks over again. And I'm pretty sure he quadruple took because
Mhm.
I think he looked at least 4 times because Nick is like covered in blood, like they're carrying like these fake guns and just like standing out on the side of the wilderness. And yeah, he eventually just drove on. I guess just like I'm not gonna deal with that.
I mean, probably debating on whether or not to call the cops, right? Like,
Probably.
yeah.
Uh,
Now, I would say it's probably not a good idea to disclose any liabilities, because Andrew working in the government now, the NSA is definitely one of our loyal listeners. So,
I would imagine so.
no, it just also the editing with your guns, like the muzzle flashes and everything, it looked really good too. I just wanted to point that out and give you a big props on that. It looked excellent.
Thank you. I definitely took a good bit of time for the editing process,
Mhm.
particularly in layering in gunshot noises. Like, there's
Mhm.
a lot of layers of gunshot noises just to like
Mhm.
fill the space and make it feel like there's a decent amount of gunfire around
Mhm.
them. It takes a lot more layers than you might think to do that. So it was some time consuming on the sound editing part, but I think it paid off pretty well.
Now, the explosion. Tell me a little bit about that one because you go from making these amazing, amazing little gunshots, and then there's like the
Yeah, that's one of those ones where I would say that's one of those ones. I just recently listened to the episode that Trevor did, where
Mhm.
he was saying you have a big idea and then you do it, and then you're like, that's good enough. That'll it'll work. That was kind of the experience with the explosion. I had already done quite a bit, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna layer in a free downloaded explosion that I found somewhere, and and that'll work for the purposes of what we're doing here. That
uh,
that would probably be one of the things that I would love to do if I had unlimited money, is to do that practically. That
oh
would be a
yeah,
lot. Like, if I could go out in like the middle of nowhere and just like set it off, that would have been really fun to do.
that's excellent. Stice's episode hasn't been released yet at the time of recording this, but he said the same thing. He's like, next year I want to try and go practical with my explosions. He wants to actually do pyrotechnics and stuff. And that being said, if you do that, I would like to be involved in the project in whatever way I can.
Well, you did play such a complex character in your own film, so I'd say
That's
you're
true.
I'd say you were showing off your skills. I would say yours is probably the second most convoluted film in after mine, I would imagine.
It's not about my um but just talking about Christopher Nolan so much. The
Hmm.
the scene where we go into Luigi's and you know, we film that scene twice. We film it each time. I have to change shirts and like stand in a different spot and I have to change shirts and I have to keep moving the camera and stuff. And that one scene took like 3, 4 hours, and all of my actors were mad at me. And I just had to keep going. Trust me, I see it in my head. I know what I'm doing. I got this. And all I could think about is this is probably how Christopher Nolan feels every single day on set because nobody knows what he's thinking.
I know it's definitely how any student filmmaker feels when they're working on stuff. It's like, trust me, this is going to work out. And honestly, most of the time, it's not. It's not going to, because they haven't developed it well enough in their heads yet
Mhm.
that they can really like think it through and like shoot something and know what it's going to turn out to be. Like
Mhm,
that's one of the most difficult things, I think, is the trying to edit things ahead of time, like edit it as you're planning it.
mhm.
Um, that's a difficult skill to master.
Can you think of any Easter eggs or fun facts or stories from behind the scenes that we haven't talked about already?
First off, the final scene where they're in the battle and all of that,
Mhm,
that was like early afternoon. So we had been filming all morning. We had kind of been working our way to that point, and uh, we filmed a slow motion shot of Logan Schaefer as the other, and then my phone overheated because it was so hot out. It was like probably 90 something
mhm.
degrees, just straight sun. And
Yeah.
so my phone overheated. So we had to go into the woods for a while to let the phone cool down. And then we filmed the last scene. And I believe, like, as we were finishing the last scene, my phone died and was just completely out of battery. Like, I had run it down, the entire battery out filming with it that morning. But as we were filming that last scene, I had made up a concoction of fake blood, and it was like corn syrup, some red and blue food dye, a little bit of cocoa powder, I think, and some like chocolate syrup that's been sitting in our closet for who knows how long. So I had made it just thinking, like, you could like put it around, have it on your hand and stuff like that. But Nick's like, no, I'm gonna do a spit take. And I was like, all right, all right. So we're like, all right, we got to get this. We get this first try. So he throws it back, and we go down, and he spits it all out of there. And he was afterwards. He was like, that was absolutely nasty. I'm like, yeah. Honestly, I think I put some flour in there too to thicken it up. So it was really not wise, not wise to let him put it in his mouth. But he was dedicated to it, and he pulled it off really really well. I think, as far as the death scene and stuff. So yeah, I think we did another take just without the spit take part of it
Mhm.
afterward to like get his lines and stuff. But most of it we just got that first take as he was spitting it out. But yeah, we had some good dedication on the
Yeah,
crew for
that's
this one.
awesome. Yeah, and it does look really good. I forgot about that actually. So we've gone from the silent film where you try to set a mousetrap to temporal whips with masked others. Where do we go from here? Are you playing with any ideas or concepts for 22?
I haven't thought of any concepts yet. I'm interested to see when we get a little closer and we kind of have the prompts and all of that stuff. I started working at a news station like 3 months ago,
Mhm.
and so I've been working almost exclusively in 10, 15, and 30-second increments for all of my projects.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that means I'll go for something like really short and sweet next year,
Mhm.
or if, because I have like all the time in the world, compared to 30 seconds, if I'll go extensive. I haven't figured that out, but it'll probably be one of those two, either short, really short, or like use every bit of time that I've got.
Do you think there is a perfect recipe for a PRFF submission?
I don't think so. I think there's some of it is just having the right moment and the right time. Because like there are things that are just hilariously funny in the moment, you know, and you can't necessarily like bottle that. And like later you'll look back on it and you'll be like, why was that so funny? I don't know why I was laughing at that so hard. And so I think there's those kinds of moments that you can't necessarily predict. So there's lots of things that you can do, like knowing the group and like
Mhm.
our previous experiences and like having all the things that we have in common. So there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of play into that. But I do think there's some things that just, if it's the timing is just right, and you know Zach is laughing hard, and I think you can, there's just like certain things that really capture people, like Aaron's thing with the dog
Hmm.
this year is just like everybody was like yelling at the screen and like into it.
Hmm.
If you can get that kind of engagement and get people like feeling that, I think that's really the thing. But I don't know if there's a necessarily a recipe to do that. There's like things that you can do to head in that direction, but some of it is just the right timing.
At the end of the day, it's not really about the competition. If anything, it's about bonding over the films. I said in Zach's interview that I think, in a way, each of these films is kind of like a love letter to the group. It's saying, "Hey, I didn't have much time, but this is what I created for you." And so I think that's what's really cool about the festival.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this year. More I had a little more time. Last year, the whole month of July was just like crazy busy. So
Mhm.
I ended up filming the video the day before the submission date and then editing it the next day and sending it in. So it was just like a really rushed thing. But this one I had a little more time to like write out a script and plan, and I think that was, and actually have time to like edit all the
Mhm.
details and put in some good music and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's great when you can have that time to be able to do it.
Yeah. It was definitely a masterpiece. Thank you so much for creating it. Everybody loved it. This has been the PRFF podcast, and I'm just hanging out.
Hanging out with my family.
Perfect, man. Perfect.